Hello, dear friends. I don't speak English well, so I asked Uta to read my talk. Thank you kindly, Uta. But some phrases I will try to say myself, creating a sound bridge between us. I will tell you about Russian. I will try to add some color to her image, to highlight some historical moments, and to look inside her psychological life. Of course, I will reflect on the forces and energies and make some assumption in this regard. Now, we'll turn off the cameras so you can concentrate it on the text and visuals. But first, a little introduction. Two of Tibetan statements. First, peace is not the goal for our race or time.
This is obvious to every disciple, for whom peace means complete control of soul over form, spirit over matter. Until then, it is war. A war with one's lower qualities, a war to integrate and purify the vehicles of the soul, a war with glamour and illusion. And as humanity is still passing through the threshold of the first initiation, or maybe has already passed, the real war for it is just beginning. Humanity will now more clearly distinguish the pairs of opposites of its own nature and gain greater sensitivity to the kaleidoscope of forces and energies affecting it.
Second, war is but an aspect of change and has its roots deep in matter.
So as we look at people, nations, or national conglomerates, we must understand that these are only temporary forms of some global energy processes in the body of humanity. Each nation has its own long-standing grievances, karmic trails, special energy lines. They stretch from the deep past and are sometimes not obvious in the current incarnation of the nation. The Tibetan also draws our attention to the fact that the history of Christianity is the history of Europe, which is defined by the abuse of the law of attraction and repulsion that has produced various cleavages. And the entering seventh ray will bring healing and affirm synthesis.
Let me remind you that the way from dualities to synthesis is ruled by the air trigon, the channel for the energy of the great constellations.
Its work leads all pairs of opposites from the recognized opposition of Gemini through the balance point of Libra to the synthesis of Aquarius. This is especially relevant given that the now steadily increasing influence of Aquarius is the soul sign of both Russia and America, who represent the most acute pair of opposites of the current crisis. If you add to this the fact that humanity itself, still standing at the point of Libra, trying to find the golden mean between the already recognized spiritual ideals and the pleasures of material diversity, the depth of the current world crisis becomes clear.
The energy of Gemini is well manifested in the key triangle of nations and in Europe itself too, creating a kind of bridge.
We have the US, the UK, Brussels as a focal point of US influence in Europe, and Poland as a faithful representative of American and British influence, not forgetting, of course, its own interests. And then the bridge stops at the huge space of Russia. And somewhere between Warsaw and Moscow lies the dividing line between East and West. Of course, it is obvious that the energy of Gemini rules the Leo-Aquarius pair of Russia. As the third apex of all opposite signs of the zodiac, encouraging them to synthesize through the power of the second ray, which enters through this sign into the solar system. This energy can heal the rifts the opposition has created. Perhaps this process will be accelerated when the mind of humanity is ruled by the fourth ray and the law of loving understanding. Gemini will then conduct the light of the intuition, a sense of group coherence, capable of overcoming any contradictions. I would like to believe that after 2025, when the fourth ray's influence begins to increase, we will see this trend more clearly.
Now, after a brief introduction, let's look at Russia.
In Russia, whose personality and most likely also astral body is ruled by the sixth ray, and whose dominant religion is also on the sixth ray, the problem of cleavages is pronounced. History shows that from the beginning of the 14th century, the soul of Russia began to appropriate its physical vehicle, organizing human and deva units of a certain quality, ceding with them the appropriate territory. And then arose the concept of the Holy Land of Russia. New territories were settled in an interesting way. A monk would go into the deep woods and set up a hermitage and pray there. People would come to him from afar for advice and blessing. Some stayed and built houses nearby to pray and live a righteous life together. That's how villages arose. That's how Russia grew in land. The focal point of this process was Sergei Radonetsky. He proclaimed the spiritual foundations of community life in a way which could be understood by everyone.
Nikolai Rerich dedicated his paintings to Saint Sergius. Yelena Rerich called him, quote, the great teacher and guardian of Russia, who saturated the spirit of the people with fire grace and high ideals that defined the nation's genetic code.
What is this energy? Can we see its earlier manifestation in the age of Pisces? I think it is that line of the first aspect of the sixth ray energy of Christianity, which comes from the Apostle Peter. who established his communities in modern Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Central and Northern Asia, the Caucasus, and even in China. May this energy line not be the basis of Russia's close friendship with these countries? Then Peter founded the Apostolic Church of the East, with its simplicity, purity, and depth of righteousness of community life. For Russia, whose physical body apparently vibrates on the first ray, this branch of Christianity was very consonant and became a force linking people and territory into a single state formation. This process was formalized under Tsar Ivan III by the middle of the 15th century, when the newly born Russia declared itself as an integral state with state borders, a formalized life center, its capital Moscow, a set of laws regulating its inner life, its own state symbols, and a central point of consciousness in the person of the sovereign, who proclaimed to the world, "I am the Tsar of all Russia." And if anyone would like to delve deeper into the spiritual ideals of the Russian people, meditate on Peter's first council message and his words. Finally, be you, all of one mind, compassionate, brotherly, merciful, friendly, humble. Chapter 3:8.
Friends, you will probably say that this is not like Russia. Remember, the Tibetan pointed out that the qualities for her energies are the most humanistic, harmless, and leading to brotherhood.
And brotherhood, fraternity, as we remember, is the synthesis of all life on earth in the consciousness of God himself. And the manifestation of such fraternity through the fusion of all pairs of opposites is the culmination of the Gemini work. Russia has sought for centuries to realize these principles. It has emphasized Jesus as the perfect but earthly man, and Christ as the higher principle that brings forth the will of God. And the task of man is to become such a pure channel for God through a righteous, holy community life in works and prayer. And this can only be achieved, as they say in Russia, with all the world. Repentance was seen as an internal process of alignment, of contact with God as a teacher. No priestly mediation of absolution was required. The church was only a home for conjoined prayer, an inner work in a unified group channel. I think it was this vision that could lead to the doctrine of reincarnation, the denial of which has become a black mark for the modern Christian church with its indulgences, luxuries, and political ambitions. It is important for us to understand that the current war in Ukraine has deep esoteric and religious roots. It is, among other things, a war of the modern church form of Christianity with those powerful energies that are hidden in the depths of the religious spirit of the Russian people. And they are capable of destroying this crystallized, corrupt, and politicized modern church. And this degraded but still powerful form is very much afraid of it. Therefore, under the cover of military action, in Ukraine there is a process of the eradication of everything Russian, the destruction of the Orthodox faith, and the destruction of its churches and monasteries.
You may ask, why exactly is Ukraine a battlefield? Perhaps this territory is an energy channel at the level of the solar plexus, through which Russia is connected to the world astral sphere and its religious life.
It was from the territory of Ukraine to Russia began to penetrate alien Russian Orthodoxy symbols and rituals of the Greco-Roman model. The slide shows the deeper meaning of the Russian word pravoslavie. Interestingly, Kievo-Pekorskaya Lavra, the great shrine of Orthodoxy, is historically divided into two parts. The lower or inner part, the monastic sacred cave-like part, and the upper, outer part, the majestic celebrated beauty of architectural forms. So, by 1650 in Russia, the conflict of the two forces is formalized and two personified focal points in the astral body of the Russian nation emerge. Patriarch Nikon and Protopopop Avakum. And the apogee of their religious confrontation in Moscow goes hand in hand with the war between Russia and Poland on the physical plane for control of the Ukrainian lands. As a result, Ukraine joins Russia as a very wide autonomy. And in Russia, there is a grandiose church split, in the process of which all the vices of the sixth ray come to the surface: fanaticism, commitment to its own ideals, as well as uncompromising in the ritual form. The focus of the nation's personal life shifted to the astral plane and literally inflamed its solar plexus center. This fire had its expression on the physical plane as well. The Western influence was stronger, and within 140 years, the monastic cloisters across Russia were in flames. In them, they burned alive those who adhered to the native Russian form of divine service. Their rights were not officially restored until the year 2000. So, in the crucible of church dissent, where more than 200,000 people have been burned, the Russian people also has been split. The church, in the person of Nikon, tried to stand at the head of the state and to establish in Russia the universal throne of orthodoxy and absolute theocracy. This most likely was already the influence of the seventh sub-ray, which in Europe led in 1860 to the question of the infallibility of the Pope. Russia is still extremely sensitive to everything that comes through Kiev. Jolts through the solar plexus, which becomes an open gateway at a certain point in the aspirant's life, are very painful and can provoke an acute reaction. The historical memory of battles over territory and battles over symbols of faith is very strong in the people. Through the gates of Ukraine, even today, penetrates what Russia has been fighting against for centuries. This time, quite infernal forces are entering through these gates, and Orthodox churches are burning again. Denise will touch on this a bit in the second part of his talk. Going back to Peter's apostolic line, it may be recalled that the struggle against evil, primarily in himself, was key for him. Apparently, it is a key theme for Russia as well.
At the heart of the emblem of Russia lives a rider on a white horse, destroying the forces of evil with a spear.
The spear, like the sword, is a symbol of the first ray, and Archangel Michael, one of the main tutelary saints of Russia, is the exponent of this energy, which, as we know, engages for its descent into the three worlds, the seventh ray. And the very symbolism of the double-headed eagle extends a thread to the Indian Vedas and the ancient religions of Asia. Isn't this energy the basis of the current cooperation of these countries? Ganda Perunda, which translates as strong, terrible, is not only a symbol of duality, but also of Vahana, the mighty fiery energy of Mahavishnu himself, which is released when the world is filled with evil, and which even Shiva himself, with difficulty, manages to tame. It is also a solar symbol, and the two heads of the eagle show the 2 points of the solstice, summer and winter, light and darkness, soul and personality. God Savitar, sung by the Rig Veda, is called an eagle, and in incarnation manifests as 2 eagles sitting on the tree of life, the symbol of the duality of the soul. Russia today has entered the battle with evil because the rich flowering of materialism is evil for the spiritual essence of Russia, wherever it is located, inside its personality or outside. Interestingly, in the 21st century, Russia's tool becomes a religiously nurtured spirit of patriotism as loyalty to the fatherland, as an expression of the observance of the commandments of the Heavenly Father, and a readiness to destroy what does not conform to them.
Here we see today the point of unity of the 2 branches of Christianity and the point of integration for the Russian people.
This is also expressed in its external form. For the 75th anniversary of the victory over fascism, near Moscow, the Temple of the Armed Forces of Russia was erected. It is filled with unusual symbolism of colors and materials. It is made of glass and metal melted down from Nazi weapons from World War II. It also contains symbols of both branches of Orthodoxy. Try to capture the stark beauty of this temple and the energy behind it.
So let's see the overall picture to better realize the energy state of Russia.
By the beginning of the 18th century, Russia as a nation had formed its physical and astral vehicles and experienced a cleavage within the emotional body. Pushing back from the two poles that emerged, her consciousness rushed towards the mental plane to form a center of control over her astral nature. This was facilitated by the heyday of the Enlightenment in Europe. Since this period, the relationship between Russia and the West acquires a new dimension. Previously, the relationship was at the level of physical, etheric, and astral vehicles, which was expressed in territorial disputes or alliances, trade relations, and religious influences. Now, Russia is turning to Europe as the source that brings the light of knowledge. We are told that the method of the seventh ray, the method of the new age, will no longer be related to the duality of the astral plane, where Arjuna fought in the past and where the religious life of the mystic is focused. For the disciples, including the nations, the two poles will be the focal point on the mental plane and on the physical plane. And a clear, direct channel must be created between them. Perhaps this is what the Tibetan meant when he spoke of Russia as Arjuna in a very specific sense. The holiness of the earth, the purity of the motive, is the condition for the manifestation of the soul of Russia. The seventh ray, the ruler of the etheric plane, always seeks its point of polarization in the material world, linking the pair of opposites, spirit and matter. Now, the mystical Russia is faced with the task of forming a center on the mental plane through which the energies of the soul could flow. The city of St. Petersburg, founded by Peter the Great in 1703, becomes the outward expression of such a center. A second capital emerges, and a new duality within national life.
But I will talk about this in the second part of my presentation, on the final day of the conference. I won't be able to answer your questions online, but you can write them in the chat room. And now, please watch a little video. I think it will round out what was said today. Paintings by Rerich, music by the Russian composer Sviridov, singing monks of the Orthodox monastery. The two inscriptions in Russian are the final two lines of the Great Invocation. Thanks, friends, for your attention.